Hello and welcome back. So in this section, we'll continue with Git and GitHub, right? In the last section, we looked at basic installations and necessary setups that we needed to have, right? So in this section, we just want to focus on concepts and definitions. Of course, it's going to be hands-on. I will need to write some codes just to demonstrate whatever concept I'm trying to explain. So without wasting time, let's get started. So what we'd want to do first is to actually create, we need to create a project, right? That will represent what we are working on. Okay, let's just have a folder created there. Let's call this learn Git, right? So this is representing a project now, a project folder. So what we need to do is open, I will use the command prompt. So open the command prompt, cd into that project, right? So that we can interact with it and do whatever we want to do, right? So now this is my current working directory. I want to open it in VS Code, code docs, right? That opens it in VS Code. Now there is nothing there. It's an empty folder. Let's create something basic, right? Let's just create a file called index.html, right? Index.html. So what we can do here is just have something basic. And let's name this. Okay, let me zoom this out. So that. Okay. So let's name this learn Git, right? And GitHub. So I will still use the same text as the title, as the heading one, right? So the aim here is not to write HTML. It's just to have something that we can use to practice Git and GitHub, right? So now I think that's all I need. So let's say I want to start using Git now, right? Why will I even want to use Git? What is Git? What is GitHub? I know we have installed in the last section, but it will be out of place to just start saying, if I say type Git status and you just type it and you don't even know why you should use Git, you don't know why you should use GitHub, you don't know the difference between Git and GitHub and all that. So if you don't have that background concept on, right, it's going to be difficult to actually process all that is going on and the usefulness of these tools. So before I move on to implement certain things here, just note that I have this project now, right? And I have, I'm in the current working directory. So what I will do is, I'll come to my guide again. So where we have Git versus GitHub. So let's now explain what Git is all about. So Git is actually a version control system, right? A version control system. So what does this do? It helps you to track changes in your code, right? It allows you to manage versions. It allows you to collaborate with others and revert to previous states if needed, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to explain that statement. So it allows to track changes. Now, look at what I did here. I've done some things here, right? So it will be good that if I come back, maybe I close my laptop and I come back and maybe in a few years' time, right? It will be good that I can check what I've done. I can revert to previous commits, right? Previous histories that have been saved and all that. It will be good that I can also save a copy of this, my project, in the cloud so that others can work with me and all that. So what you would do normally is that you will need to now tell Git, right, to watch this learn Git project for changes. So right now, nothing is there. Git is not initiated on this, right? If I do Git status, which is a command to actually check the state of things, right? See that nothing is coming up. It's not a Git repository. So which means that a Git repository must be created first, right? Before Git can start tracking changes. So the way you do that is just to type Git init. So this is going to initiate a Git repository, right? And if I do that, you will notice that it created a .git folder, right, inside this project. So it is inside that Git folder. This is what we call repository, local repository, right? Inside it, every of your files will be there that represents your project. Changes and commit histories are going to be there. So that ensures that you can keep track of everything you are doing as you are working. Now, if I come back and do Git status, right, I should see some changes already. Now you see index.html. This is the current file that I created, right? And currently is untracked, right? So usually you will move this file away from untracked to tracked, which is the staging, right? Then from staging to commit. So I will come back to that. But as I'm explaining those concepts, I just want to also demonstrate this, right? So if you come to the project folder itself, you will notice, if I come to desktop link, so you'll notice that the repository is this .git, right? If you open it, you have this. Don't tamper with it at all. Now, if you are not seeing it, right, usually you would have to click on view and check these hidden items, right? You can see that it's gone. So it might be hidden. You just enable, you just check it so that you can see it. So that's it about initiating Git, right, on your project so that you can watch for changes, right? You have to use the Git init first, Git init command, right, first, in order to be able to start working with Git. Now, don't forget, I said it's a version control system. It should be clearer now. It helps you track changes. You've seen the index.html that I created, right? I was able to see the state of things, and I can actually track those changes. So allowing you to manage versions, right? You can have different versions, maybe version 1, when you are done, you want to release version 2 to your users, right? You can easily do that with Git. Collaborate with others. In fact, this is very powerful because most times when you are working on project, you'll be working with other developers, and you are not necessarily going to be in the same location, work in the same company, right? Most times the project I've worked on, we are in different part of the state, right? And you are just the project is, there's a common base for everyone to start from, right? On the GitHub, you just you clone it or you pull from it, and then you create a branch and you start doing your work. When you are done, right, you make a pull request that your changes should be marked with the master branch on the main branch. And once it is vetted and seen that, okay, it's okay, right, the feature is working as should, it will be marked. So that's how everybody contributes towards a project. So you can't do away with Git and GitHub, right? So again, you can revert, it allows to revert to previous states of if needed. So for instance, if I've done this Git status, Git add. So now I want to move this untracked file. I want to move it to staging, meaning where it is tracked and ready to be committed. So if I do Git status now, after running that Git add, right, you see that it has changed to green, meaning that this is in the staging area, ready for commit, right? Git commit -m. Usually you give it a commit message. So let's just say initial commit, right? So it has been committed, and you can see that it's committed with a unique ID, right? If I do git log, it means don't worry about all these commands, I'll still come back to it. So you can see that there's a record of this, the time and all that. So at a later time in future, if I want to revert back to this, I can use this ID, right, to actually do that. So that's what this is all about. So how it works, first of all, you have to install locally. You have to install Git locally on the computer. We've done that, right? You have to create a repository where Git will track changes. I've also done that. When I did Git init, it did create a repository, as you'll notice here, .git, right? That's the local repository, all right? So that's it with Git, right? Then when it comes to GitHub, so don't forget that Git is actually a software that is installed. So GitHub, on the other hand, is a web-based platform, right? Where you can actually host repository, just like I made you create a GitHub account, just like you can see my own GitHub account now. This is not installed, right? It's a website, but it allows you to host your project, right? And since it's hosted on the cloud, everybody have access via the internet, and they can contribute one way or the other using the right things, doing the right things. So host Git repositories online, so it makes it easier to share your code with others and collaborate on projects, right? So how it was, what you do is that you push your local Git repository to GitHub, where it can be accessed by others, reviewed and integrated with various tools. So it's ideal for collaboration, right? So we have other platforms like Bitbucket and all that, right? But GitHub is very popular. So if I want to push this project now, what I have here, right? If I want to push it to GitHub, so that I have this local repository that has been created, and I've used it to track my changes. I have committed it. If I do Git status now, you see that there is nothing to commit because I'm here to do anything here, right? So if I come back here and let's say I added another thing, let's say paragraph, and I'm just saying lorem, just something random, lorem, let's say lorem 10, lorem 10, or let's just say lorem, doesn't matter, right? If I come here and do Git status again, you will see that that change has been recorded. So you see that again, I will need to now move that move that changes, right? That change, I'll need to move it to staging area where it can be committed. So when I do Git status again, right, you see that this is green. Then I can now do Git commit -m, right? So I can just say added a paragraph. So whatever you're adding, whatever message you are putting in actually should represent what you did so that it can be useful. So that's it. Now I have two things. If I do git log, you see that I have two commits, right? So now all this is still local to my PC. So how can I make this available remotely on GitHub? That's where we start talking about creating a repository, right? And then pushing this update over there so that we can begin to work with that. So in the next section, I will actually take you through that route where we get this project to be pushed to the remote, right? And then we can start doing other things. So I've explained what Git is all about, what GitHub is all about. There are two different things, right? In summary, right, Git is a tool for tracking changes in your code locally, whereas GitHub is a service for hosting and managing Git repositories online. This facilitates collaboration, right? Still on concepts, just more on Git repository. What is a repository? A repository is basically a storage space, right, where your project files along with other complete histories are tracked using Git. And I've explained that when I wanted to instantiate that Git init, right, I told you that is the repository, and I told you what is there. So that is where the changes and all that will be tracked, right? So then it allows you to manage and track changes to your code, just like I've shown you some changes I made, and I was able to track it, move it from untracked to staging, then from staging to commit and all that. So you can also, it allows you to, this way you're able to collaborate with others. You're also able to revert to previous versions of your project. So nothing is lost, right? A Git repository can either be local. This one I created here, right, is local. This one is local. And usually you will need the remote counterpart, right? So we also have the remote repository. So by the time I create the remote repository, it will make sense to you. So basically, that is what I want to capture. Now, okay, some key components of Git repository that you need to be aware of. The working directory, you must be in the working directory, right? So as to be able to track things. And you can see that I came to the working directory, which is the Learn project. And that's where I instantiated the Git to watch over that directory. Then I began to run the necessary commands, right? So the working directory is the current state of your project files that you can modify and work on. Then the staging area, I showed you also the staging area, right? Where when I made some changes and I have to run some codes, right, to move it from the on track to staging, where it turns green. So that's the staging area. It's a space where changes are prepared and reviewed before they are committed. So anything in staging area means they are ready for commit, right? So files added to the staging area are marked to be included in the next commit. So the commit itself is just a snapshot of changes in the staging area, right? It's more like an history. So each commit is a recorded point in the project history with a unique identifier. And you will notice that I showed a unique identifier here, right? So this allows me to go back to that, whatever I've done up to that point in time. Then branches, right? We can't but talk about branches. And this is where collaboration is possible, right? So usually when you are working on the project, there'll be a common base where everybody starts from, right? Maybe to just contain necessary files to start with. Then if you have 2, 3 persons working on the same project, right? Maybe I'm assigned to work on users authentication and login, register and all that, and another person is working on maybe notification, right? We can create a branch of the main branch and then start doing our work. Then when we are done, the branch, whatever branch you create, right, is going to be unique. It's going to be an independent entity from the main branch. So whatever changes you are making in the branch you created of the main branch is not going to affect the main branch. When you are done with the branch and the feature in that branch, you can then request for a merge, right, of your updates to the main branch via pull request. Or if you're not clear about these things, but by the time I demonstrate them, it's going to make sense to you. So branches are parallel lines of development. Branches allow you to work on different features or versions of a project without affecting the main code base, right? And this makes collaboration possible. So remote repository, I've mentioned that also, a version of your repository hosted on the internet or network, allowing for collaboration and backup. For instance, now you notice that I have a project here that I showed you earlier. If I go to, okay, I'll move away from here. If I go to my repositories, you see that I have one here that, okay, yeah. So you see this one, right? This is what a repository looks like. And it just saves everything that I've worked on that project so far, right? So that's just, that's it about the key concepts that I want you to, the concepts that I actually want you to get familiar with, right? So in the next section, we'll start working on the commands, right? The necessary commands that you must know, right, in order to work with Git and do things appropriately and collaborate with others. So that's it. In the next section, we continue from there.